All right. And with that, we are live on this edition of Night Shift, one unlike any other, following a gut wrenching, one of the most gut wrenching losses in the history of UCF football. And that's saying something. There's been some gut wrenchers, folks, but this one is pretty bad.
Oh boy.
I'm Eric Lopez.
Let's turn back the clock a little bit. What's the old saying? We used to UCF games where snatching defeat from the jaws
it's back,
of victory.
Baby. Yeah, those are the independent days. Oh, my goodness. I'm Eric Lopez.
Will remember that.
Yeah, we do. I'm Eric Lopez. We're probably the only ones going to handle this a lot better than the youngsters like Bryson Turner, who's hanging out with us. Drew Glukoff with us. Eric Lopez. UCF losing 42-35 in just a wild game that just there's just a lot of stuff that just goes beyond explanation. We'll try our best, though, to explain it. But my goodness, that was insane, boys. 42-35, a pick six wins it for Louisville in the waning seconds. Not that this is going to make anybody feel better, but UCF and Louisville have played two wild, exciting games 8 years apart on a Friday night in Louisville. Let's just play them all on Friday night. But unfortunately, this one, though, goes through the Cardinals. We got a lot of comments in right now. We're going to read as much of it as we can. Make sure you send us questions here as well as on our Twitter page, on Banneret. Of course, Eric Lopez Elo. You know where to find us. Drew, I'm going to just set you up and ask, wow, what's your thoughts on this one?
Well, I mean, this was a case of completely being outcoached up one way and down the other. Every facet of this game was in Louisville's favor from a coaching standpoint. They had the better offensive game plan. They had the better defensive game plan. And the box score says it all. This is Dylan Gabriel's worst offensive output since since he played only half a game against FAMU. In fact, this is his only start that he threw for under 200 yards. Going 22 for 29 for 184, 3 touchdowns, and that pick of all picks that sealed this game away. Injuries do happen. Losing Bowser, even though he came back, but he just really wasn't the same. You have to adjust, and I think UCF actually handled it pretty well. Trinidad Coles did well. Johnny Richardson, 100-yard rusher on the day, but. This is dog Dylan Gabriel since he was a freshman in 2019 on big games. Whenever they play a 3-3-5 defense, he struggles. And as a result, 22 completions, 184 yards. It's about 6 yards average. You're talking about, a lot of checkdowns. And that's not UCF offense. And when you're playing third and mid-level, third and long, checkdowns don't convert. And drives stalled, and they just couldn't take advantage of any opportunity that was given to them.
Yeah, I mean, interesting. Defensively, they had a rough night. We talked about this on the podcast. How will this defense handle a dual threat quarterback like Malik Cunningham? They have not had any success against a dual threat quarterback in the past, certainly in the Shannon era at all. Would we see improvements? And well, the answer was no, it wasn't. The only thing that stopped Malik Cunningham, the only thing that stopped Malik Cunningham was his cramps. And then now the interesting, I want you to expand on Drew offensively because yes, Bowser got hurt, kind of hurt the running game a little bit. Although Richardson ran well, the problem with him was he kept getting tackled by the grass or the turf.
He did. He outran his own legs.
Nike gear, by the way.
No. Richardson's a very fast guy. He outran his own legs.
What issues did you have with the offensive game plan? Because they still put up 35 points, had opportunities, granted, to score more, but I'm blaming more the defense on this game than the offense. But you obviously feel that the offense had a big hand on this too?
Well, and they both deserve blame. And granted, the defense is definitely more to blame. I mean, they gave up 35 points. That last touchdown I don't put on the defense, obviously, because they were never on the field. The problem was, when the defense did something right, 3 and out, get a punt, get the ball back, the offense didn't capitalize. They, especially once in the second half, they always played a step behind. Louisville would get the lead, they'd come back and tie it. they would have an opportunity to take the lead and couldn't capitalize. And it goes back to the fact that Louisville adjusted their defense and just gave Gabriel fits. Either he was throwing to checkdowns or he was tucking the ball and running. And you look at the numbers, I mean, he ran the ball 10 times and really got nothing out of it. That's not what he did against Boise State. It's obviously not what he did against Bethune-Cookman, but this is a different team. This is obviously a Power 5 team. Louisville still recovering from the disaster that led to the Satterfield era. And this is really what it looks like. They're turning the corner. They're not a top team like an Ole Miss, as the score showed when they played, but this is a good team with some beef up front and a really difficult quarterback to manage. I mean, UCF's defense just out of position, over pursued, missed tackles left and right. I mean, I lost count the number of missed tackles, and it wasn't just on Malik Cunningham. It was against everybody. I mean, this was just a defensive nightmare, leaving players open, running backs breaking off, and no one picking them up for easy first down conversions. And there's no excuse for that. That's where it comes back to coaching and game plan. They weren't prepared.
Well, were they not prepared, or are the players just not good enough? Like, at what point do we start saying, maybe these players aren't good enough? Because we blamed the coaches last year when they didn't make plays and they got torched defensively. Different scheme. They looked good in the first 2 games. Now, I do think this. I think Satterfield and Louisville did some things tonight that they have not shown on tape the first 2 games. And I think that might have caught it. But at the end of the day, these guys, I don't blame the tackling to me. I just don't think these guys are a talented group. And I think at some point we have to accept there are flaws on this roster from a defensive standpoint.
Oh, there's massive flaws. Your defensive line. Look at Anthony Montalvo got chewed up and spit out. I mean, they basically running exclusive to his side wherever he lined up. That's where they ran, and it was working. They were staying away from Big Cat Bryant, who really actually had a good game.
Yes,
he had pass deflections, he had hurries, he did it all. But the other side on the defensive line just did not produce whatsoever.
Yep.
We did get to see Tremont Morris-Brash come back, and he made a big play. Obviously, the interception that led to the other interception, which you never saw that coming. But
you only see that in NCAA 14.
Let's bring in. Let me bring in Bryson. Yeah, let me bring in Bryson, who's the young one of our fan base. He hasn't gone through as many of these as me and Drew have.
I've lost count the number of these that I've been through.
And then Bryson's going to be following social media. Before you comment on what your thoughts, Bryson, I know let's follow a story here. Dillon Gabriel was down on the field on the last play of the game when they try these trickerations, which are always dangerous. He was down. There was some concern about that. You have Jason Beatty, who's covering the game for the Orlando Sentinel, has tweeted about it. What did he say about Dillon Gabriel, Bryson?
Okay, so this comes 15 minutes ago. Jason Beatty said, quote, quarterback Dillon Gabriel is back up and walked off on his own power to the medical cart, riding the cart to the locker room. Gabriel clearly in pain. Looked to be grabbing his lower body, hip area. Not entirely sure, though. There was a reply to that tweet that said from Dr. Jen Kurtz at Jenny Gale that said Mark Daniels is reporting left shoulder arm. That's the UCF radio announcer. And so Jason Beatty quoted that tweet and said, this would make sense. He was definitely holding his arm down. So that's why I said hip. But again, wasn't sure. Hopefully nothing too serious. So I saw the broadcast showed him down for a minute. I was hoping that I was mistaken because I only saw it for maybe a split second. I was hoping I read the number wrong. Yeah, I was not, and now I'm getting traumatic flashbacks of 2018. Probably not as serious, but still, when your quarterback goes down, especially a quarterback as good as Dillon Gabriel, oh, man.
Well, you're going to be following that story tonight here on social media. That's obviously something to monitor. I don't know how much we're going to learn tonight, but it is worth mentioning, and we'll discuss that situation later. I want to get to the comments because this is – people are fired up. This is about you, the audience, as much as it's about us. So we're here.
It's not about us at all. Let's be honest.
Fallen Hero describes it, I think, pretty well. All I know is pain.
Well, let's get into some of the questions here because we're like
in pain. Yeah, I know that way too well.
I want to get into some of the questions here. Brian Stevens, you were already in field goal range. Just run the damn ball and attempt the field goal. Worst thing that would have happened is you go to overtime, dumb play call. That's a little. What do you guys think about that? That seems to me that's hindsight. You're playing the result. I had no issues dumping the ball off there. You were not in field goal range. Louisville's playing against the run. It's a safe pass. The ball's got to be caught. If he catches, you're trying to get into field goal range. And remember, kicking game, not, it's been, we're not the most confident. We don't have Matt Prater back there, NFL Matt Prater. Drew, your thoughts?
Well, let's be honest. That actually wasn't field goal range. They were at the Louisville 41. You're talking about a 58-yard field goal. That's not field goal range. They needed to get at least another 20 yards based on Obarski's numbers, which is 0 for everything on kicks over 40 yards.
Right.
So they had a ways to go, and they didn't have much time. So, it wasn't a bad play. Amari Johnson should have caught that. That was right in his hands. It bounced out, and you don't even have to get the tip drill at that point. It was basically a giant meatball, and you just had to catch it and run. But, there was really nothing wrong with it except for the final result. And, as you and I know, sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. And in this case, Louisville got that lucky break.
Right.
And that was the end of the game.
Yeah. And I'm fine with if you want to criticize certain things, but I think that seems to me like it's second guessing after you're guessing the result. If he runs the ball there and they don't make a lot of people are then criticizing him for being too conservative. Because I saw some of that.
Of yards to get too.
Right, exactly. I'm okay. You're trying to win a game there. And Dillon Gabriel's your best offensive player. He's your guy. You trust your quarterback in that situation. So I didn't have a problem with that. Let's go to Christian. Frustrating game tonight. Wish we could have squeaked it out. Now let's go root for Cincinnati. Well, we got a long ways to go before that one. Obviously, Christian concerned about DG. Look, we'll get into DG a little bit. Maybe we're hoping that we're going to wait to see if we get any more clarification. There. More people questioning the running game, not running the ball there. We lost Bowser super early on, in addition to some other key players on, so that didn't help us at all. Drew, you don't agree with some of the consensus that losing Bowser hurt this offense from a running game standpoint. You think it was more than that?
Well, it did hurt, but I don't think it totally tipped the scales. Let's keep this in perspective. Some people thought that was the deciding point of this game, and I disagree with that. I thought the other players, in particular Coles and more so Richardson, actually did a fine job substituting in. Richardson was his own worst enemy when it came to running the ball, because he kept taking himself out on these long breakout runs that he might have been able to squeeze in a score out of. I don't think he would have scored on either of those, but he would have gotten closer. But here's the truth. When you look at the play distribution, it actually was really even, very, very close. And, I think that we have to respect that. Let's see, 29 total passes thrown, 34 runs total. And that includes anything that Dillon Gabriel tucked and ran. So, we're talking actually a lot of balance. In fact, there was more running yards than passing yards. The passing game just could not adapt to having those 5 defensive backs in the backfield. The 3-man rush was causing confusion on the offensive line. And UCF just, ever since Dillon Gabriel came in, and I'm not going to say it's just him, but he, being the quarterback, you're the focal point, you're the person everyone looks at, and unfortunately you also become the scapegoat. The UCF Knights offense has not played well against a 3-3-5 defense since Dillon Gabriel took over in 2019. It just hasn't happened.
We did beat Louisville in rushing yards. We had 212. They had 191. It was close, but we did beat them in that one.
All right. Other comments here. People talking about the checkdowns from Dillon. How much of this, though, because I saw Trace, our good friend Trace Trelko from Sons of UCF, he was at the press box. He was saying that the receivers were not getting separation. So from TV, we don't see that. We see him checking down and looking, but he had time at times to throw, and he was looking, then he checked down. I don't think it was, hey, the play was to check down. I think that's what was available. I don't know. Again, what do you think about all that, Drew? How much of this, I got to think some of this was receivers not getting separation from the secondary.
I think 95% of it is receivers not getting through the secondary. Dillon Gabriel's shown that he's actually really grown into the ability to go through his progressions. And the fact that he's looking downfield, he's surveying, you can watch him as he's dropping back. He's looking in different angles and then settles on the check down. it shows how strong the secondary for Louisville was from both a planning standpoint and an executing standpoint, and just how bad UCF's receivers were at creating separation. Perhaps they needed to change the offense to kind of bring it back closer to the quarterback. I don't know. We, not being in the press box this week, couldn't see as much of the field as Trace did. But my first inclination is there's nothing downfield. You're going to your check down. And when I'm third and mid and third and long and you're not converting, you're not going to win.
Let's take a question. This name is familiar to us. Brian Murphy.
Murph, hey.
Sounds familiar.
Wait, are we allowed to say his name?
I'm just reading a question here I'm not making any accusations at all here. Why not take more downfield passes? Number one. Number two, why did UCF's defense choose to not cover any?
That's a good question. I think he should ask that.
And then number three, what happened to running tempo? Thanks. Back to baseball. All right. All right.
Yes, Brian Murphy working with MLB. Go back to baseball.
Maybe we blame him. He wasn't there. If he was there, we win that game. He won a lot of games on the road. I don't know. What do you want to address there, Drew? Those are three. We kind of addressed the downfield passes, right? I think some of that is the lack of separation.
I have to get a recall. Which stadium did he lose his wheelchair in again? Was it Tulsa?
That was Tulsa. Yeah.
Okay, so he's off the hook on that.
Yeah. Everybody loses at Tulsa. That's not his fault. Everybody loses there.
Anyone UCF related loses at Tulsa.
By the way, that's one of the best benefits of going to the Big 12. We haven't even mentioned this. We don't have to go to Tulsa anymore. All right. But anyway, that's a rant.
Yeah, let's look at the silver lining there, as we lose track of the show. As we go back before, if you don't have it, don't force it, and that on those deep balls, it worked in the beginning. I think Louisville was caught a little bit flat-footed, wasn't expecting it right out the gate. But if you're playing a little bit softer, you're expecting those deep passes. And UCF's defense does the same thing, but I think they play a little too soft, and it kind of bit them, because when you look at the stats again, Malik Cunningham, even though he wasn't quite as efficient as Dillon Gabriel as far as completions to attempts, still had a pretty good game. 23 to 38, 265. He had a touchdown.
He ran one. He caught one.
And he caught one. Well, Dillon ran. Dillon did it all. He ran one. He caught one. He threw three. He did it all. But it comes back to the fact of you have to be able to convert. And Louisville had third and long multiple times. And it was a pass completion or Cunningham tucking and running and creating missed tackles and converting. And that's where UCF just struggled badly. You look at the third down conversion numbers. UCF 2 for 10. Louisville 5 for 15. Are either great? No. But last time I checked, 5's better than 2. And they were able to sustain drives that they shouldn't have. You're third and 11, and you're converting on that, and there's something horribly wrong. And that goes back to a lot of the fundamental problems this defense has when it comes to tackling and when it comes to pass coverage.
Yeah, by the way, Louisville had the ball 32 minutes. We talked about this on the podcast, Drew. Louisville averaged around 34 minutes time of possession. And again, they dink, gash you in a little bit, but they kind of control the clock enough. Field position. What about let's talk about some of the defensive, because the thing that blew me away, and you mentioned the UCF not being in positions of, I also give credit to Satterfield. They were able to expose some of the mismatches. How many times do we keep seeing the linebackers being covered by Mitchell, the running back, or the tight end? They would just take advantage. Malik would take advantage of that. And I felt like at times, I think part of that was UCF mentally was so concerned with Malik because he was getting loose that they're forgetting, now all of a sudden, like, wait, where's Malik? Oh, wait, we got to cover this. And it's almost like they're wheels. But I thought the linebackers in particular, Louisville clearly attacked them when it came to the passing game and try, with the running backs and even the tight ends, making sure they would cover the linebackers were in coverage against them.
Oh, yeah. That mismatch was absolutely horrendous. Jeremiah Jean-Baptiste was completely caught out of position, looking the wrong way, just falling all over himself, creating a pass interference call that ultimately led to a Louisville touchdown. And it just happened over and over again. And if it wasn't the mismatch, it was no match, where The running back, hits a bump at the line, and then curls off, and no one picks them up, and that created other first down conversions on plays that should not have been.
Harmonic RL last play was the reason they lost, though. He catches it. It's at least a 5-yard gain, definitely field goal range, and we still have more time. I don't know. They're in field goal range with that catch. I think
catch, but they can move the ball. They still have
they would have needed more. Brian Stevens' players not good enough on defense, especially at the line of scrimmage. To me, that's the other interesting thing. Big Cat is their best player, I think, on defense. Louisville clearly, their plan was to run away from him, run at the edges. And it absolutely. And you're going to see, and the sports are copycats. I guarantee you Luke Fickell was watching this as they get set to play Indiana. Teams moving forward, this is what they're going to see. UCF's going to see more of this. What can they do? Is there anything they could do there to control the edge that they could have done tonight, or maybe moving forward they may have to consider thinking of doing?
Well, I mean, let's be honest. Luke Fickell is licking his chops. It's just he can't be probably any more excited because he has a dual threat quarterback, and UCF does not play well against dual threat quarterbacks, and we see more evidence of it tonight, where Malik Cunningham barely missed 100 yards rushing, and was the team leader. I mean, he was able to run pretty much all day, and he's got to be very excited. I think Tremont Morris-Brash getting back into the swing of things, I think, will help. But there's definitely a talent disparity here. And you have good front, and you have good in a couple of pieces on the linebacker side. But I mean, we're seeing a lot of exposure. The tackling of Jeremiah Jean-Baptiste and Eric Gilliard looks like it's taken a step back from last year. Players are out of position. Transfer Marco Domio was out of position multiple times to make tackles downfield. It's never a good thing when your leading tackler going in, throughout the season has been a defensive back, and it was Quadric Bullard going into this game. That's never encouraging at all. I would be very concerned if I'm the UCF coaching staff at that point, because you need your front seven to be more ahead of the game, and if you're playing back with your defensive backs having to make so many tackles, that's not good. That's not good at all.
Bryson, I haven't had a chance to ask you your thoughts here. You've had a few minutes to digest this. You're not used to this, as I mentioned earlier. So what's your reaction here? Because you represent the young base, the very voice, wait, if you will.
Are you trying to call us old? Are you saying we're old?
We're still in our prime, Drew, but Drew's not used to this. He doesn't, I remember we did a podcast, I brought up Ryan Schneider, and I needed to explain to Bryson who Ryan Schneider was, like some certain parts of the fan base. Bryson, how are you doing, first of all? And your thoughts?
Just look at his face. That says it all.
I wanted to give him some time to decompress, because he could get fiery, folks. You haven't seen the behind the scenes version of Bryson.
Well, I mean, you see the flag
because I care.
hanging.
Because I care. I care so much.
I'd like to point out real quick, Bryson. You see that UCF thing on the back. I don't know if it's a flag or something. See, it's hanging down because he's known to hulk out, and things just get destroyed back there.
Oh man,
That is a tote bag that I have. I have two of them because I had one for years, and it was kind of deteriorated a little bit. So I think that's the second one. But I figured I have my UCF decorations are all on this wall that are off screen, so you can't really see it. So figured I'd go ahead and have a little UCF Knight logo background there to go right below my Orlando Apollos one.
Rest in peace.
Yes, indeed. But as far as this game,
yes.
So I'm no stranger to heartbreakers, at least as a viewer. I still vividly remember in my Lake Claire dorm room watching UCF and Pitt play each other in 2019.
That was 2 years ago.
I know, but I still remember that, and I'm thinking, like, come on, we can still win this. We like when the streak ended, the regular season winning streak ended, and I still remember being kind of in a daze after that, and just kind of mourning the streak, I guess, because I've lived in it for so long. And as far as ever since then, we've had games like the Memphis game when Dillon Gabriel threw for more yards than he'd ever thrown before, and we still lost. And in this game, Dillon Gabriel basically scores a touchdown in every way he possibly could, threw it, ran it, caught it, and we still lose. He ends up throwing for one of the lowest amount of yardage totals he's thrown for, and it's just one of those, and we still could have won. And what really burns me, or really makes me mad a little bit, is that we had that little taste of victory because of Tremont Moore's brash interception. Like, the script was already writing itself. He was out for 2 games. He tips it and catches the winning interception, and UCF is about to go on another game-winning drive in Papa John's Stadium, but then NCAA 14 happens, and
oh man!
I mean, I swear I've had that happen to me in NCAA 14 and Madden several times before, and I can't believe it when it happens there.
Yeah,
but I'm going to turn it back the clock a bit. Man. That was Tecmo Bowl, where you just
I love Tecmo Bowl. And it's I love Tecmo Bowl. I love Tecmo Bowl.
That said, all the props in the world, though, go to Malik Cunningham.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, that's like,
he led the team in rushing with 99 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's made defensive guys miss multiple times. He threw for 265 yards, and he was limping in the 4th quarter. I mean, I honestly, I'm mad at us for the mistakes that we've made, but Malik Cunningham, hats off to you. I hope that we'll see what happens with him going forward.
I want to jump on that. The announcers on the game were hamming up Malik Cunningham. Playing. It looked like cramps. Playing a little bit lame, and they were using the Byron Leftwich comparison.
I know where he was limping.
They said that was the pros. No, it was actually in college when he was being carried. Here's the difference: he had a broken leg. There's a difference.
Look, man, you got to milk it for TV, man. You got
holy moly, that was a bit of an exaggeration. I mean, yeah, it was a very gutsy win, but come on. I mean, the Byron Leftwich thing is legendary. That's more than Cunningham did. But let's not take away from that was a very tough win, and that was not an easy atmosphere for even Louisville to play in. Those UCF fans were loud. I give them a lot of credit. They were loud and proud, and boy, early on, you could hear them by far over the Louisville fans on the television.
That was tough. Facts, luck, style. Their quarterback was something. This has been a topic underneath there. I thought about it. This burn hurts worse than the 2019 Cincinnati loss, but not as much as Pitt. This and Pitt felt similar game-wise, but Pitt lost us the streak. Felt like the longer and harder to fall to earth with Pitt. That's a good. Which one's harder there, Drew?
Oh, it's Pitt by far. I mean, come on, you lost on a gimmick play. I mean, this at least, an interception for a touchdown. Okay, that does happen, but losing on a gimmick play like that, that's beyond ridiculous. I would take the Pitt one. Plus, you had the streak, and you had all this.
The streak is what makes the difference there. The streak is what makes the difference. You just never know who comes out of a door to end the streak. There, Mike Friedman. Do we have an update on Bowser? Saw him go to the temp, but didn't hear. I don't think we did get any clarity, right, Bryson? We talked about early in the game. There was a knee. They were kind of talking about the knee, and he had a brace, but he kind of came back. But then he, hard to tell. We're waiting to see if we get some comments from Gus on social media. We'll bring that to you, but I don't know. What did you see anything, Drew, that stood out there with Bowser and injury? As of now, I don't think it's clear.
He kind of ran a little bit funny when he came back in the second half. I mean, he did not look like the same guy. I mean, he almost kind of galloped. Kind of looked a little bit off on one leg, but I don't expect to hear anything really until they're back in Orlando.
I would agree. And they have a bye week next week, so we may not hear for a while.
Ooh, that's a tough opponent. Bye never loses.
Oof.
Fight Rockies and hope and date you.
They are fresh. They are very fresh people. That's definitely a deal about there. Okay, we do have a tweet from Gus. I'm going to try to see if this is technology, folks. All right, but while I look up the tweet here, So the odds of making New Year's Six, if we win out, including Cincinnati, also winning out aside from against us, I think I don't even want to. I got to tell you something. With the issues on this defensive side of the ball and even some on the offense, I think that's the last thing we got to worry about. I said before the season, this was a transitional year. This was probably a 2-loss team, 3-loss. You look at the road games at Louisville, at Cincinnati, at SMU. Now, Navy has turned out as not very good. It looks like they don't have a quarterback. But still, I think we got a long ways to go before we can even get into that conversation. Am I Drew? What do you think, Drew?
Well, when we did our season picks, I picked UCF to have 2 losses in the regular season, not go to the conference championship, and end up in the military bowl. So I don't. They still control their destiny. I don't think they'll do it. There's too many flaws on this team, and when you compare it to Cincinnati, who may not have as flashy of an offense, but has a defense with 2 guys who are getting All-American talks in the preseason. I have a heavy reservations on this team still going to a New Year's Six.
Christian brings up another point, though. We're going to have to face Tulane this year.
Oh, and they're a tough team. They're a scrappy team.
Put some respect on Michael Pratt's name, man.
And I love the helmet that they're throwing back, the old throwbacks that are SEC days. That thing is gorgeous.
Yeah, they're probably the 4th best team right now in the American. You're right. By the way, here's so Emily Van Buskirk, who actually I met at the Stanford game 2 years ago. She covers college football, travels, does a really good job. She's covered this game tonight. She's asked about Coach Malzahn. Here's her quote. When asked about Dylan's arm in a sling, Coach Malzahn said, "I just don't know." That's what we got. That was from Emily there a little while ago. So, and again, I think that's going to be the consensus. We don't know. We're probably not going to know moving forward. Now, this is interesting here. Malzahn kept saying he believes this could be a defining moment for this team, UCF. Your reaction? That's an interesting. What do you think? Defining moment? I can see where he's coming from on that, right? Because now, as a player, this is where you find out what you're made of. You regroup. Are you going to let this loss linger and define your season, or do you bounce back to get better? I mean, obviously, that's what Gus' message is going to be tonight.
Well, losing sometimes is actually healthy. They say it builds character. Everything that builds character sucks. But this actually may be good for a young team that needs to kind of come together. There's a lot of transfers. There's a lot of young guys, especially on that defensive backfield. There's things still kind of coalescing. And you sometimes need to be slapped in the face and beaten senseless with a hammer to kind of wake up and realize, oh, snap, we need to do something. This is a defining moment. Do they turn the corner, aim towards conference play, and do what they have to do? Or do they start laying down? And it can go either way. That really is a question on the mental toughness of the team. And they're going to find out really soon.
I want to ask you, there was a moment in that 4th quarter. Louisville goes on a fake punt, does not make it. UCF gets short field position. This was they really had great field position all night. I think that's the frustrating thing from the offensive standpoint. They just didn't take advantage of it. They get to 4th down. Gus decides to punt. They punt up to the 9-yard line. Louisville goes 91 yards on that drive. They scored the touchdown to take the lead. Some people thought Gus should have gone for it. What was your reaction to that, Drew, when that happened? Trace and I were exchanging tweets, and he's like, let's remember that. That was a key factor. I thought UCF had a great opportunity there. I did not have an issue with punting there. You're punting them inside the 10. You got to think your defense could stop them, and not go 91 yards. Obviously, it didn't work out. But I understood why he went. It was still 4th and 5, I believe, 4th and 6. Your thoughts?
4th and 6. They got to 4th and 1. They had the false start. They got pushed to 4th and 6. They punted. But look at the last 4 drives: punt, touchdown, punt, and a loss on downs, based on the fake punt. So the defense was doing a relatively good job holding things in play. However, first play was a 27-yard run by Malik Cunningham that had multiple missed tackles. I mean, it was just an absolute disaster. Then you had the touchdown, the wide receiver pass touchdown in the same drive at the very end, that 45-yarder. This was actually a 4-play drive. 27, 2, 17, 45. You don't expect your defense to lay down and die like that, but that's what they did. And it ended up biting them big time because UCF gets the ball back, they punt. They just could not put anything together.
You got Jeff Levy called an offense that made Louisville look ridiculous. He also has a better offense than UCF.
Matt Corral is just
really Matt Corral's pretty darn good.
Has really blossomed.
Yeah, so I think we found out Ole Miss is pretty darn good. But that being said, let me ask you this. If you're Gus tonight, if Gus calls you, Drew, and talks to you, what's going to keep him awake between the next couple of nights here? What's he going to think when he thinks back to this game? What kind of things is he going to think about? Like, man, we should have done this better. I should have done this better, whatever. What's he going to be thinking about?
Well, I know he's an offense guy, so he's probably going to be thinking offense stuff. So he's probably thinking in terms of, adjusting to the 3-3-5 a little bit better and changing your game plan based on that defense, which Louisville kept running more and more. Other than that, they are running a base 4-3, which is a lot more malleable to work against. You can really do anything with that defense, and you can really do anything to that defense. But that 3-3-5, you got to bring everyone back home. You got to really start, a lot more short to mid-range. And I think it would have been a fantastic opportunity to use some bubble screens or something like that, because you had so many defensive backs playing back and not much in the box that could have a quick pursuit of the ball. So I think that's what's going to keep them up. Now, what should keep them up is how bad my defense has been in tackling. But I know he lets the defense, lets T. Will and the defensive coaches handle that. That's what's going to keep me up at night would be the tackling that was just beyond atrocious. I mean, it was awful on every level.
At least we got our first sack. Congrats to Josh Seliscar for that one.
Oh, the sack monkey is gone.
Oh, wow, that's true. I want to put up this tweet. Marlon Williams has chimed in.
Yeah, I think I know the tweet you're talking about.
Because obviously people are being critical. I mean, I'm shocked by this. Night Nation's not handling this loss well. I'm shocked. Marlon Williams chiming in on people questioning about catching the ball the last play. Have you ever tried to catch a ball coming that fast at you from 5 yards away? I don't think so. Drew, you've played the game. So you have a perspective. I know you weren't a receiver.
I wasn't a receiver. I had good hands, but I wasn't a receiver because I wasn't fast enough.
But I think I think Marlon makes a great point, and I do want to look. I get it. People are mad and frustrated, but should he have caught the ball? Sure, but easier said than done, right? Especially when you got guys coming 100 miles an hour trying to drill. Football's a violent game. It's easy to say, "Hey, catch that," when you're not having a 200, a defensive player that's going to come at you at a good speed to tackle you. I sometimes sympathize with receivers. I get it. I'm not saying that, hey, he should not have been caught, but I think Marlon Williams makes a valid point here.
Well, he does. And the truth is, running over the middle sometimes can be a death sentence.
Yes.
I mean, you can get blown up moving over the middle. And that's where the ball was thrown. Granted, Amari Johnson wasn't in a quite full stride like some routes would have you do. But when you're throwing that close, I remember hearing stories about Brett Favre throwing the ball, and he's a gunslinger, and Gabriel's a gunslinger. They break fingers trying to catch these balls. I mean, it's not easy. It hurts. It hurts. And those gloves are good for sticking. I have some wide receiver gloves that I would play pickup football in, after I was out of college. But I mean, even then, I'm not receiving a super fastball that would be coming from an FBS quarterback. I'm receiving someone from some washed up has-been. The rule has always been, if you can get your hands on it, you should catch it. But, trying to catch a fastball like that when you have very little reaction time, it's not easy. But then again, you're playing for the top level of football. They expect you to do it. But I mean, it was more of an unfortunate bounce that it worked out that way. I mean, 9 out of 10 times, I think Amari Johnson would have caught that.
Right, but he's young, right? Like, he's not, he's not Nuke Hopkins, right? Like, there's a reason why there's guys like Nuke Hopkins of the world that get paid for a living to do this. It's, especially over the middle. That's receivers over the middle. That's a tough, because you got to deal with mental there's a lot of things going on.
And you can get blown up. I mean, you can get really hurt. And we've seen,
right.
I remember in the NFL watching Muhammad Massaquoi get his head taken off by who is it? Harrison from Pittsburgh. And, that's a risk. When you run over the middle for a catch, you can get blown up. And that sometimes sits in your head just enough that it could cause the slightest bit of focus to go away. And that's all it takes. But here's the truth. It never should have come down to that play. If that's the play you're hanging up on the wrong play. It's a whole body of work that led to that moment. All the missed tackles, the bad pass defensive assignments, all those. I mean, the interception, yeah, it sucks, and it's a terrible way to lose the game. The game was not decided on that play.
No.
Oh, yeah.
No.
I'll say this real quick. So in the second half, right near the beginning of the fourth quarter, we got a turnover on downs on Louisville. And what did we do after that? And we're near midfield. What do we do after that? We go 3 and out.
0. Just like everything else they did when they took advantage of a mistake, they didn't capitalize. Except not
to mention the injuries. We've talked about Isaiah Bowser, but I mean, Tatum Bethune, Corey Thornton, Devad Wilson. We did see Devad come back in, but man, this defense got kind of banged up tonight.
Yeah, I'd like to point out, since they've updated the stats, you know who the leader in tackles for UCF was? The same leader in the first game and the second game, Quadric Bullard, a defensive back.
And credit to you. You brought this up on our podcast. This is why you need to subscribe to our podcast, ladies and gentlemen. Every week, we kind of tell it like it is. And I know some people get mad about that sometimes, but we try to kind of get you prepared as best we can. And Drew, you brought this up. That was a concern you had. You don't explain to the audience why that is something that concerns you when a defensive back is your leading tackler.
Well, that means they're getting into the second level, which is beyond the defensive line into where the linebackers are. If you're getting to that point, you're already 6-7 yards downfield. So you're looking at, a chunk yardage situation. Now, granted, defensive backs come up, but that means the linemen and the linebackers aren't making the plays. I mean, it has to be a little bit concerning if you have to, a safety's doing all your work. I mean, last year Richie Grant was the guy doing most of the work, and look at how the defense struggled. The defensive back should not be the guy leading the team. You and I, let's turn back the way back time machine into 2004. Who led the team in tackles? A defensive back. Granted, he was a wide receiver, but he was playing defensive back. And Brandon Marshall. Usually good teams don't have to rely on their defensive back to be the guy to make the tackles. He should be a guy making the tackles.
Jason Beatty, obviously the Sentinel, is just tweeted out a couple minutes ago. Gus Malzahn said he didn't know the diagnosis yet of Dillon Gabriel's injury when we spoke with him post-game. He's a great competitor, quote, great player, competed to the last game. Gabriel was spotted after the game with his left arm in a sling. All right, so UCF, it's worth noting they have a bye week this week. Next week coming up comes at a really good time for a lot of reasons. This team got beat up a little bit, which I want to get into as well. But they go to Navy October 2nd, East Carolina Saturday, October 9th, and then the big one at Cincinnati, October the 16th, Drew. Again, we don't know what the sling means. I don't think we're going to know for a little while what the status for Dillon is. But if Dillon, and again, we're not going to speculate much more than just say if Dillon has to miss time here, Drew, Mikey Keene his number could be called here in a couple of weeks. What do you expect from a UCF offense? What can he do? What can he not do if his number is called?
Well, if Gabriel's out for any period of time, it's Mikey Keene's time. He still has that time for the red shirt. He's only appeared in one game, so he still has 3 more games he can appear in at any time this season. Those rules have changed in the last few years, where it's no longer the first 4 games and a limited amount of time within them. It's any 4 games. So if he's going to miss any period of time, they're going to put Mikey Keene in. He's the one who's looked the best as far as having a handle on the offense. And the truth is, they're going to have to simplify the offense for him. He doesn't, he obviously has not been playing as long as Dillon Gabriel. Some of the nuances that Dillon has learned from playing, obviously Mikey's still learning. So they're probably going to simplify the offense a bit for him, but he has the physical tools to do everything Dillon Gabriel has. He has a decent arm, he has great legs, and he has a sense of when to get the ball out, which is one thing that I really noticed during the spring game between him and Parker Navarro is Navarro ran around a lot, but he never threw the ball away. Mikey Keene has a better sense of what to do with the ball and when to do it. And they're gonna have to start prepping him because you don't know what this injury is going to be. Obviously, it could be nothing. It could be just precautionary. It could be a dislocation. It could be a separation, and it's on the left arm. It's his throwing arm, and you can't take chances on that. You gotta they gotta try to heal him up the best they can. So I'm pretty sure we'll find out. Maybe not Monday, but I'm sure over the next week we should find out what the prognosis is.
Well, and the good news is, again, you got a bye week, so good, valuable reps could be had here between now and the next game against Navy. So there's a positive.
The timing couldn't have been better if you had to deal with a bad injury.
What do you think of the Thornton injury? How big of a factor was that? We have talked about Bowser, now obviously Dillon's injury, but they weren't the only ones that went down today.
Well, I mean, Corey Thornton has been much maligned this year. A lot of pass interferences, a lot of not so good situations. He's part of a young defensive secondary that's just struggling, and you took one guy who was struggling and not really excelling. You put in another guy, Marco Domio, who stepped in and he also struggled and was not very successful. So I think you just traded one problem for another. And I think the comment you put at the bottom, the amount of holding calls that I saw that were not called was fascinating. It was amazing. I must have caught at least 9 or 10 different holding calls that were not called against Louisville. And some of them were blatantly obvious, where Big Cat Bryant's trying to break a free. He puts his arm all the way up here, and you got the lineman who's pulling him down here. And I don't know how the refs swallowed their whistles as hard as they did on some of these calls. I mean, there's always the theory, like you could call holding on every play. I mean, you can, but when it's blatantly obvious, you got to call those. If you're trying to get your arm up like this, and the lineman is pulling so hard that you can see it on TV from a distance, you have to call that. I mean, there's no excuse for it.
But I mean, the problem is, and this happens this is a problem in every sport. Every official is different. Some like to call it tight. Some don't call it at all. Some like to call it mixed bag. Some are not consistent. I got to be honest with you. I like the way the game was officiated tonight. Why? Because the game had a flow. I love the flow of this game. Like, there's been games where the game just drags on for 4 to 4.5 hours. As all I ask is consistency. You could say, hey, they should have called this, should call that. I rather have officials that let things go than to call things every call.
Well, I mean, I understand consistency, but you also want the game to be fair and correct. Flow is great, but when guys are doing penalties, you're basically artificially creating flow, and that's wrong. You have to call the game as it is, and if there's holding and it's blatant holding, you have to call it. And it doesn't matter if it slows down the flow or not. That's a fan thing. That's
but I mean, here's the thing: UCF got called 7 penalties, 55 yards. Louisville 4 for 46. If UCF was called for like 13 penalties and Louisville would be called for 4, I would have a bigger issue with that.
Well, it wasn't one-sided. It wasn't one-sided.
Okay, that's all I'm saying. Let's be fair. If you want to say they weren't good on both sides, I'll buy that. I just don't feel comfortable. I hate when we just go to hey, let's blame the refs because we lost.
Well, it's beyond that. It was, they called the hold on Sam Jackson when he pancaked the defender and held him down. But then they missed this, which was just as obvious. And that's where my frustration is. Missing, when it comes to holding, you can nitpick a bit because they're really holding on every play. It's just the obvious calls. The obvious ones are the ones, okay, if it's on UCF, call it, call it. And they did. If it's on Louisville, you need to call it. And there was a couple times where they flat out did not. They just followed the whistles on occasion.
But it goes back to your point here. You said at the beginning of this, if you're in position to make plays, you don't have to worry about the officials trying to bail, making a call, right? Isn't that the Cardinal? Control what you control. Part of the problem is you're hoping that the refs can bail you out on this call because you just gave up some plays.
Well, I mean, it works both ways. I mean,
right.
Look at when, UCF got the benefit when Richardson was face masked. I mean, it was actually hard to tell in the replay if he really did, because it was so close between the face mask and the collar of the shoulder pads. I think it was legit, but it was so close. From our standpoint, it could have been a little tough to see. But UCF got the benefit and got bailed out there. I mean, sometimes it just happens. You shouldn't be saying, "Oh, we need to be bailed out by the refs." But if it comes to the fact that there is a penalty committed on the play, you need to call it.
Yeah, I'm trying to find out. Unless one of you guys know, I'm trying to see if it's an ACC crew or an American crew.
I don't know, but I would assume it's an American crew.
I would agree. Usually the visiting team, so it is what it is. You want to talk about a blatant, to me, an official's cost you a game. Google 1999 UCF at Georgia. Google that one, buddy. That's when you go after the officials. All right, there was a blatant pass interference that would have won the game for UCF that wasn't called, and stuff.
No, it was the other way around.
It was the other way around. Thank you. Yes.
It was an offensive pass interference that didn't exist.
That's a lot worse. Holding. You know how many texts I get from my SEC friends about complaining about Alabama holding on every play? I mean, we could spend this hours on holding. It is what it is, man. Don't put yourself in that position. That's the disappointing thing here, Drew, is they put themselves in a position where we're nitpicking a penalty here or there, where a question that was asked during the game, and you brought this up, no spy, or at least it didn't look like they had a spy for Malik Cunningham. That was the thing that I was surprised we didn't see that. Not many. They didn't really blitz as much either until, hey, look, he's cramping. Maybe we should blitz him. That part was kind of curious to me. Was it curious to you?
Well, I thought that they needed a spy. I mean, between, thinking about it Thursday and then into early Friday, they needed it. There's just so much speed, and, someone had to step up and do something. And, I wrote in the roundtable that UCF's going to need that tackling skill. And I thought Bryson Armstrong was going to do a lot more. And he ended up being second in the team in tackles, but still underwhelming. I was just not overly impressed with how that came out. I mean, it's just, I thought a spy would have been needed. I mentioned it. I was on another show up in Memphis earlier this week. And
look at Joe, big timer here, getting booked for guests, huh?
Well, I mean, I don't do as much as you do, but
fair enough. Shout out Mark Moses. There you go.
But still, I mentioned the need of a spy, and that would have gone a long way, because the moment he breaks out when he's dropping back in the pocket, you immediately start moving. Yeah, he's going to get a couple yards, but instead of, a 27-yard, run, you can limit it to 2 to 3, and I'll take a 2-yard run any play.
You mentioned the officials. I looked at the UCF box score provided on the UCFathletics.com. The referee for this game was Charles Lamartina, and I did a little bit of research, and so take it with a grain of salt. I may be wrong, but but it says he's a referee for the American Athletic Conference.
There you go. I would believe it, because that's normal for most contracts where the road team supplies the referees. It's to kind of level the playing field.
Yeah. By the way, I love this, Bryson. You're like our stat boy. You're like Tony Reale back in the day on Pardon the Interruption. You're just
right.
Look, I love this.
I'd like to point out that used to be me, which is where the Twitter handle came from.
That's what it was. Okay.
When I was doing terrestrial radio, the guys I was doing it with, because I would always dig up numbers, they basically said my Twitter handle wasn't good enough and I had to change it.
All right. Mike Doty asked an interesting question here. Why did we wait till the fourth quarter to put in Salazar? He's talking about. Yeah, so
that's a very good question. There was a lot of rotational issues that I wasn't quite sure about. I mean, why they run Montalvo as long as they did when he was just getting eaten for lunch? I don't have a good answer to that. That actually may be a good question to ask T-Will at the next press conference.
Sunday night. Yeah, if you want to make the drive during NFL Sunday.
Looking at you, Bryson. Looking at you.
Wow.
I live 2.5 hours away.
I do. I do. I live 15 minutes away from campus, so I completely get it. One thing that I do want to mention as I've been scrolling through social media.
Yeah, how's the Twitter Mafia? How's Night Nation? How we doing on social media?
So this is a combination of Night Nation and just some national audiences because of course Gus Malzahn. A lot of criticism of Gus Malzahn or just jokes that Gus Malzahn, in another fluke game, Summer just criticizing his coaching decisions in this game. So I think that's one thing that I think maybe would like to address. How much of this was Gus Malzahn or Travis Williams or any of the coaches? I mean, I know that we've talked on the podcast and on Night Shift before about how sometimes we blame the coaches when it's really the players. So, but how much of this is Gus Malzahn and how much of this is the players?
I guess I'll jump on that first. On defense, I would say it's more the players. It didn't matter who was coaching. The defense just as a unit's just not very good. And they got worse and worse last year as time went on. The offense, I'm going to put that more on Malzahn. The 3-3-5 issues that UCF has run into for the last 3 years, they should have made adjustments to it. And yes, the receivers could not break coverage downfield. Okay, change it up, bring them back. Use some shorter stuff. I understand not respecting the run because Isaiah Bowser was out. Well, the run was actually really effective. So if they're not going to respect the run, keep running it. Just run it down their throats. If they're not going to respect it, there's going to come a certain point where they're going to have to start bringing another guy back into the box, and that's when you start opening up the passing book again. And I don't think they didn't do it.
How much of this is he's still learning the personnel he has? I know they've had spring in the fall, but these are not his players. He inherited a lot of these players, and you can only learn so much at a practice. You learn so many things. This is live action here. And this is kind of why I thought at the beginning of the year they might lose this game. They could lose a couple early because, these players are still learning him. He's still learning them. I'm not saying that that's an excuse for some of the play calls necessarily, but it's not like he's had this team for 5 years and he knows every ins and outs of this team. I think there's still some things that they're still learning and trying to still figure it out. And maybe they, unfortunately, sometimes you have to learn this stuff the hard way.
I don't buy it. I'm not buying that at all. This is part of the package. Coaches have moved from school to school before. That's part of the the way it works. And they've been together for months. They've had spring ball. They've had off-season training and everything in between. It's not like 2020 where there was a legit, I have no ability to get to know my players. That was not the case in 2021. I don't buy that at all whatsoever. If you don't know your players, then you're not doing your job.
By the way, I want to jump in. Cossack advisor, run was not good until the end, though. Richardson had some nice run.
Richardson didn't show up until the end, though. Didn't he? He didn't really play much early on. They kind of Bowser went down training and goals came in a lot.
It was really the second half when things kind of changed up. But also in the second half, they started playing, with the extra defensive back more, and the running game worked against the 3-3-5.
Oh man, this is tough.
I know.
Oh man, the whole game pivoted on the. All right, stop. All right, again, we're gonna get over the refs. The refs, yes, the refs have it all against us. They're gonna go against them today.
The refs didn't have it against UCF. I mean, that was the same excuse that was used in 2012 when they lost the conference championship to Tulsa. You play to win the game, and this was a case that UCF just did not make enough plays. And they made too many mistakes. That's what it comes down to.
I'll say this. We talked a little before the show, and one of the things I mentioned is that one of the things you could sum up the secondary in this game is that Malik Cunningham was able to connect with receivers multiple times that were surrounded by White, and yet they were nowhere near him.
Well, they were playing zone. They were playing zone coverage. The problem with zone coverage is if you don't have it here, you can't play zone coverage. You're going to make mistakes, and it's been biting him all 3 games.
I'm just saying you can't leave people like Mitchell wide open, like Mitchell, Justin Marshall, like they've and Marshawn Ford. They were hit for wide open passes in key moments late in the second half, and you can't let that happen on defense.
Well, yeah, and that comes with finding holes within zones, and also when players aren't as mentally into a zone defense, they're gonna miss their assignments, and that's what happened on some of those cases where they just messed up assignments. Now there were times when they were playing man and they played a little bit closer, but a lot of those times you're talking about, well, you had 3 or 4 white shirts within the area. That's that zone coverage, and they're just sitting in the holes in the zone. And Malik Cunningham was just able to hit them for good yardage. 7, 8, 17.
Go ahead, Bryson.
Marshawn Ford got 8 receptions in this game for 100 yards. The guy with the second most receptions, 4. Malik Cunningham really knew how to connect with his tight end in this one.
Oh, well, it's because it was a constant mismatch. The linebackers of UCF were not able to keep up with him. If I'm correct, he was once, actually I'm thinking of Justin Marshall, who was the wide receiver who converted, but I mean, there's still a lot of speed. And I remember it just goes, reminds me of the USF game back in 2017, that last touchdown where Pat Jasinski was lined up on a wide receiver that was twice as fast, and he didn't stand a prayer. That's one of the fallbacks of when you're spreading the ball out and you're constantly running the 4-3, you're going to put linebackers on guys that they may not be able to match up with. At that point, normal, traditional strategy would say switch to a nickel, but because UCF's defensive backs have had such a hard time, you couldn't switch to a defensive back. So it was basically you were between a rock and a hard place.
So what is the answer defensively here, Drew? They got a bye week. What is there a scheme difference they could do? What do we learn now with this team 3 games in that they got to work on here if they want to have a chance to win a conference championship? What needs to happen?
Well, I'm going to make some assumptions here. Okay. Assumption 1, Dylan Gabriel's fine. He'll play the next game. Let's make that the first assumption.
Okay.
Assumption number 2, basically all the guys are going to be back. Bowser, Thornton, anyone who got beat up is going to be back for the next game. Let's go with that. Against Navy and East Carolina, you're not going to be pushed the same way that Louisville did. However, Cincinnati has run the same style defense, knowing that it has worked well against UCF. You need to start practicing against that. You need to game plan against that. You need to expect it on the offensive side. That's going to be what you're going to see because of all the times that the UCF offense under Dylan Gabriel during his time here has struggled against that defensive style, and that with the 3-man front and the 5-man in the backfield. On the defensive side, it's a lot tougher. The tackling fundamentals are just so ridiculously off what they should be. I think a number of players have actually gone backwards since last year. Eric Gilliard, Tatum Bethune, 2 of them that have really struggled on the tackling side compared to last year. And in fact, after the Bethune-Cookman game, Tatum Bethune flat out said, I missed a bunch of tackles. I need to work on that. And he basically said all the defense needs to work on it. Unfortunately, between then and now, it hasn't gotten any better. So hopefully with the bye week, they can work on some fundamental stuff and change it up, because you need that defensive front to create pressure in order for the defensive backfield to not get exploited like they have been.
Mike is chiming in. Do you think we see more of Gatewood going forward to prepare him to play more against Cincinnati with their preparation to run against a 3-3-5? That's assuming Dylan is, let's say Dylan's out. Let's forget the Cincinnati game.
Well, you got to make this. Let's make this something that he's in. Yeah, let's assume that he's in, and then we can kind of make a separate assumption if he's out.
Because we saw Gatewood actually play even tonight, some snaps there.
He was on the field a couple times. One was called back on penalty. He was there on that 4th and 1 that got called on the false start, and then he came in a little bit later. Actually, I think Gatewood would be great to use as a scout guy. To be the Desmond Ridder leading up to the game against Cincinnati. He's a guy who can throw the ball. He's a guy who can run the ball. And they need someone of that style to really plan against. For the defensive side.
Yeah, no, I would agree here. Now, Bryson, you wanted to showcase a play from earlier, and you wanted to address this with Drew. I am obviously technically not as up to speed, but there it is.
I'm gonna preface this. This is a play from Louisville's game against Ole Miss 2 weeks ago. Watch this play. Look familiar?
Because it is.
So the reason I show this is because and this might be an assumption, but we'll see. But I think the UCF offense paid attention to the Louisville film to get this play, and they ended up using it against them, and it went for a touchdown. I think the UCF offense needs to take that expert acumen in the film room and put that towards the 3-3-5 defense, because I think that if they're able to nail that play, then I think that if they spend enough time, especially over the next 3 weeks, in looking and trying to figure out that 3-3-5 defense, then I think we should be able to perform better going against it moving forward.
Well, it's funny that you bring up this play, because it was used in the spring game between Ryan O'Keefe and Dylan Gabriel. I almost said Doug Gabriel. Whoops. Going a little old school there.
Drew, do you know you see Bryson? Do you know who Doug Gabriel is?
Ooh, don't put him on the spot like that. That's not right.
Did you just say Doug Gabriel?
Yeah.
I have not. No. Okay, look, I'm going to go ahead and date myself here. I was born in 2000, so that's what I feel old.
No, I only bring that up because this is their fan base. We have a split. We got like longtime fans like me.
It was fun to watch. I guarantee you're absolutely right. This weighed on them. But in the case of Louisville, the key is always find a way to get the ball in your best playmaker's hands. Malik Cunningham. So that's a way, in this case, of getting the ball into his hands in a different way that can throw things off. Dylan Gabriel has shown that he's got wheels. He's got some wheels, and get the ball in his hands in the open field and watch him run. We saw it last week when he ran 2,000 yards for a 44-yard touchdown run. Okay.
By the way, I love this, Mike. I agree with you, Mike. This right here, this comment right here. Would it have been easier to take if instead of the pick six, UL goes down the field and kicks a field goal to win 38-35 to complete the circle of irony? Yes, that actually crossed my mind because I'm that weird. That was exactly what I was thinking when Cunningham got the ball and UCF scored. I'm thinking it's 35-35. The odds of this ending 38-35 is just
really
mind-boggling. Right. That's the score of the UCF Louisville game in 2013. The difference was that was a Bortles to Godfrey touchdown. They were down 35-31, and Bortles drove them down for the game-winning touchdown. Louisville had the ball last. They threw a Hail Mary. It was knocked down. I thought it was 38-35, and then I even thought that when the interception happened, I'm like, wow, UCF could get into field goal range and win by the exact same score, except it didn't happen. It didn't happen.
Maybe you jinxed it.
I didn't even mention it on social media. That's the irony.
It was in your brain. You mentioned it in your brain.
I think that might have been my fault because when we were getting into the fourth quarter, I tweeted out hey, we're going in. It's a close game going into the fourth quarter. We're tied at 28, and it's like, anyone else having deja vu?
Well, it's funny. My wife was, she came home from work. She works late every other Friday, and she asked, how's the team doing? At this point, it was 14-7, and they just weren't looking good. And I said, it's not really looking all that good right now. The team's really flat. She goes, do I need to leave the house again? The story behind that was we went to someone that you and I know, Eric, Matt Brodsky, for that first game in 2007, UCF versus North Carolina State. Of course, they blow open a 25-0 lead, UCF does. And My wife goes to the bathroom during halftime. And then North Carolina State starts scoring. They start scoring. They score some more. And before you know it, it's 25-23. And we're yelling at her that this is all her fault because she went to the bathroom. So she asked me if she had to leave the house. And, of course, I was being nice. I said no. So maybe it's my wife's fault. Don't tell her I said that.
Wow. That's in depth right there, ladies and gentlemen. That is in depth there. Oh, my God. This is just – there's Gus Malzahn. This was you see some tweets.
I don't know if shrugs. A shoulder shrug.
I'm assuming you don't hear this, right?
I'm hearing a little bit, but I can't make out what it is.
Come on, Trace. Get better audio, Trace.
Felt good about it when I called
What do you hope your team learns from a game like that?
All right, he basically said he
not running the
he liked the. All right, here's the question. I'm going
ball.
to listen.
Timeouts
So they asked Gus about throwing versus running.
I was thinking that obviously when I called it, I think it could work out. It didn't. So yeah, looking back, you definitely could have ran the ball with timeouts, but felt good about it when I called it.
So he said basically, if he couldn't hear it, that was the first time we've tried this. We're trying stuff on live here, folks. We're trying live stuff here.
Doing it live.
So
Do it live.
All right, we'll work on it. We got work to do, just like UCF's got. Football's got work to do. Basically said, yeah, he thought it could, could have he run it there? Sure, he could have. He did have his timeouts. Didn't he like the play he had called there? It just didn't work out. That was basically paraphrasing what he said there.
Well, and the truth is, obviously hindsight, tells you a different story, but passing the ball wasn't a bad move at that point. You had 20 plus yards still to go with very little time. Yeah, you had your 3 timeouts, but if you only pass it for 7 yards, that's where you use your timeout. A 2-yard gain is not really what you're looking for, which is a potential when you run the ball. So I don't think passing the ball was the wrong call. It was the fact that it was just the way it worked out.
Yeah, it's cruel. That's just kind of crazy there. Couple other thoughts here. If we're going to, we'll get some more questions before we line up here. Let's see. Bryson, you said there's a Matt Lee comment that's interesting. What'd you say there?
Yes, Mike Doty commented 2 minutes ago. I think one big undervalued problem for the game was also Lee not playing.
I thought they did pretty well without him.
Okay.
I really did. Now, granted, the part of the center's job is to call out defensive changes, and there was at times where there was a little bit of confusion, and that led to at least one of the 2 sacks was just some gap confusion. But for the most part, I thought the line did okay. There was bigger problems, and it wasn't the offensive line.
Right. And then the other questions here. Thoughts on the end of the second half and not using any timeouts there either. I guess not using timeouts at either of the halves there. I don't know. Was there a moment there you would have called timeout at any point? I don't know.
Well, I mean, they didn't show they had the hurry up offense, but if you're going to do a hurry up offense, I agreed. I would have called timeouts if I was trying to push the ball downfield, which it looked like they were originally. If we were going to slow play it, okay, slow play it and just let the clock run out. But that's not what the impression was. So I could see where that particular comment's coming from.
Doty clarified, by the way, and said second quarter when UCF had the ball near the end of the second quarter.
I knew what he meant.
Okay,
second quarter. No,
you're good,
Good
Mike.
clarification.
You're good.
Let's discuss some of the fan base here, because we like, there's a lot of trash talking. And look, every college football fan does this, right? But the other thing that kind of popped in my head, hey, Louisville's terrible. The ACC's terrible. We could jump in. We could dominate. We could go to the Big 12, dominate. I think we got to remember every game's different. It's not going to be so simple. I think we got to, I don't know if humbling's the word, but we maybe should stop trash talking about the opponent until after the game. I don't know. Me.
No, I disagree on that. That's part of being a fan is to talk trash and stuff. I mean, where they're doing it is they're putting the cart before the horse with the whole Big 12 thing. Let's be honest. They, some people say already in the Big 12. No, UCF is not in the Big 12. They're going to be in the Big 12, and until they're in, they're not. They're not going to. It's not going to be rescinded. But until, as of right now, July 1st, 2024, but it's probably going to be 2023. That's when you say we're in the Big 12.
But it's not going to be easy. That's my whole point. Like, I think there's people that think they could just walk into the Big 12 and just blow by the league and win. Right? That's not going to be easy because we're going to see games like we're going to see a lot of games like this on a weekly basis in the Big 12.
Well,
Just from a tightness standpoint, depth standpoint, I mean, you got to bring it every week. You don't, with respect, there's no, bottom feeder teams, except Kansas.
Kansas.
Kansas doesn't count.
Come on, Drew. Your boy, Lance Leopold, he's going to fix it by the time UCF gets there, right?
There's
Is that about Les Miles?
I don't know if he will fix it, but he's going to improve it. I mean, that place is so far down. I mean, having a 4-win season is a massive improvement. And so I think they're going to be on the ups as long as they give Lance Leopold the ability to stay and do his work. But it's going to take time, and it's going to be a lot of losses. But the truth is, UCF's still in the American for at least another season and change.
Yes.
Yeah, they may be able to improve some of the recruiting, but that doesn't change what you have today. This is an American team. It's going to be an American team tomorrow, and it's going to be an American team next week. I don't think humble pie is what's needed, but I think it's just a better sense of perspective. UCF is on their way to the Big 12, but UCF is not a Big 12 school until they are.
Yeah, no, and I'm just saying, like, there's certain people out there, the ACC is trash, this team is trash. Let's just kind of respect. All I'm saying is let's respect, be careful there, because it could come back to haunt us. We did the same thing with Pitt.
It's fans. It's just fans talking, and fans is short for fanatic. UCF fans are going to have the black and gold goggles on. They're going to see things in a specific way that may not jive with reality, and sometimes we view our team as better than they are. But at the end of the day, football, being a game of inches, is also a game of luck. Football's a luck game, and look what happened. How this one ended. That was a combination of luck and skill. It was luck that the ball bounced the way it did. It was skill that he caught it and ran it back. So sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. We look back during the 25-game win streak. Do you know how many lucky bounces UCF had during that win streak? It was a bunch of them. And, sometimes you're with it and sometimes you're against it. And, UCF just has had bad luck finding those 50-50 moments, the last few years.
Gus Malzahn should know that more than anybody. You got to, and as somebody who, in my opinion, my favorite college football season of all time, just in terms of the entire college football landscape, is 2013. Part of the reason was because of UCF's run in that season with Blake Bortles, Storm Johnson. Loved it. The other part of that, though, was Gus Malzahn's Auburn team. And we all remember what happened that season, the miracle of Jordan Hare, the kick six. My point is Gus Malzahn is very familiar with these moments, probably more than most head coaches in the country are.
So what you're saying is we better get used to this, like a lot of drama and wacky finishes.
Oh man, the joke. Oh man, if you've been reading Twitter this entire time, a lot of the more national college football fans have really been hammering. That Gus Malzahn has been in this situation a lot.
Well, it reminds me of an old commercial. I think it was for DirecTV, and it had a football ref, and it talked about, he's measuring for a first down. He's like, drama, change the channel. Drama, change the channel. So, drama gets people to tune in. I'm very curious, and I know, Eric, you're going to find out how many people watch this game, because I think the closeness of it's going to have more eyeballs on it.
There were only 2 games on tonight. The only other one was Maryland and Illinois.
And that was trash.
It was trash before the game ever started.
True.
Also, I have two tweets here that because we were talking about the fan base.
Well, I want to bring up this tweet before we go there. Our buddy, this is like cameo night at our show. We had a tweet, a comment from an alum of our show that we will not mention his name again because he'll get all mad about it. But look who says Banneret wasn't represented. Look at that. Our boy Luke Steris. Not in a good place right now. He was at the game. Okay, maybe I was a little worked up leaving the stadium. Still not a huge fan of the play calling tonight, though. That's not on DG. Hindsight's 2020 on the pass instead of the run. More so sad that I'm stuck in Kentucky after a loss.
Just drive up to Cincinnati. Just drive up to Cincinnati and spend the night there. You're out of Kentucky.
Yeah, he was not. And Luke obviously was not happy about throwing the ball with 3 timeouts. He kind of took it back. He said DG looked gun shy all night.
I don't know if he looked gun shy, but he definitely didn't look comfortable. But This was the team's first big, road test. Well, first road test at all since having a full, the ability to have a full stadium, since 2019. And this was a fan base that was out for vengeance. They took that loss in 2013 personally. That was their year to make the undefeated run in a potential national championship. And Blake Bortles and UCF took it all away. They wanted blood.
True. Bryson, you said you had some tweets here you were to comment before I wanted to get Luke in there. So
yeah, no problem. I will say this: the only criticism that I would give Dylan Gabriel tonight, or maybe even it isn't, and this is just an observation. The short passes, because I saw Dylan Gabriel make like short passes, some screen passes, and stuff like that, and it just wasn't working the entire game, and or most of it at least. And so, they just lost a lot of yardage on those, and I'm just thinking like, it doesn't work. It's not working. So like either do it less or just not. And I don't know. Like the lost yardage in this game was ridiculous. I mean, Dylan Gabriel ran the ball plenty of times this game, but of course sacks and lost yardage on his part also count as rushing yards for him. And so Dylan Gabriel ended this game with 18 rushing yards, and I really feel like he ran for more. He might have ran for more than that.
Yeah, I mean, you lose the yards on the.
But
sacks,
he took some bad, and he took some bad sacks. There was that one where he just kept going back, and he just took like a 12-yard loss.
Yeah, he and that was one where he tried to use the hips to change direction on the player, and he didn't bite. That's a disciplined defender right there. Is follow the hips. When you play flag football. And you're a rusher, you're always told follow the hips, on a fast quarterback. It's the same concept pretty much everywhere else. You look at the hips because the hips don't lie. I'm just saying. Now, it's funny you should mention that 2013 is your craziest year. I don't know about you, Eric, but 2007 will always be the craziest year in college football to me because anything that can go wrong did go wrong.
Well, that's for the whole sport. Yeah, the whole sport. You had Louisville. I mean, LSU win the national title with 2 losses.
I watched a YouTube video about that once.
Yeah, that 07 year was crazy. It's maybe the most wackiest season in the history of college football.
Not even close.
Yeah.
It is by far the wackiest, weirdest season you'll ever see. Just go from the top to the bottom.
I feel like we could have one this year if Alabama just didn't exist. Right.
I mean, do you know how many FCS teams beat FBS opponents already this season?
Yeah, including our boy Mackenzie Milton took a loss against them starting. His first loss since the 2016 Cure Bowl against Arkansas State goes down the tubes there.
Which I say,
I find it hilarious that was Terry Mohajir's team, and now he's our AD.
Oh. That's true. By the way, 2013, I don't know. Drew, how do you think that Bryson would have handled 2013? Every game come down to the wire, the stand-back hit against Memphis.
I was there for some of those.
But you didn't live it like every single play. Like the Temple game was crazy. I mean, that was a crazy.
No, the Temple game. Oh, no, I remember watching that game. Yeah. I remember I was at a watch party for that game.
Yeah.
That one-handed catch by J.J. Wharton, I think, personally, that is probably one of my favorite plays in UCF history. I still remember from the announcer getting that. I actually interviewed him because I had wanted to do a story because I'm a UCF journalism student. And I wanted to do a story about that game, and I got an interview with Eamon McCannahy, I believe is how you pronounce it, who was the announcer of that moment. But unfortunately, I wasn't able to do the story because I couldn't find enough people for other interviews. But just the combination of the athleticism, sports science actually covered that play, and so that might be one of my favorite plays just in terms of athleticism. Closely I follow probably by the Mike Hughes kick return.
You can interview Eric; he would love it.
That was a crazy year. We might have to do a special night shift, maybe next week in the bye. We'll have to talk because Blake Bortles is getting inducted into the Hall of Fame, and he was the engineer for a lot of those comebacks in that year. Yeah, him and Sitton both going in. Sitton was in the 07 team as well. All right, let's wrap this up. It's been a long night. Drew, still got your knee-jerk reactions, which, boy, that's a perfect title for this game. That's going to be a lot of people are going to be interested there. Final thoughts. Bryce, I'm going to start with you and then you, Drew.
All right. I will certainly say don't panic. And not panic in terms of just the coaching staff and like, oh my gosh, did we make the wrong decision and that kind of thing. First off, we led up to this all week. When you look at our Knights of the Round Table, we mention him many times. Malik Cunningham really just this game went through him. This game was going to go through him. And in the end, he did a great job. He is a very great quarterback. He really elevates this entire Louisville team. Like, I think the reason that they got shellacked against Ole Miss was just because Ole Miss was able to neutralize everyone else so easily that Malik couldn't do anything because he can't do anything by himself. But this time, Malik Cunningham was able to elevate everybody else around him in order to expose the flaws in the UCF defense that we've been seeing for these past two games. And the fact that we had to come back against Boise State, the point is that UCF's flaws that we've already been seeing have been exposed. And I think the first step to solving a problem is acknowledging it's there. And now that we have lost because of those problems, because, when you win, sometimes you can overlook it sometimes. But now that we have lost, and heart-wrenchingly so, as part of that, I think we now are able to really start to diagnose where this team needs to improve and what they will need to do going forward, especially with Drew talking about going against 3-3-5 defenses. I think that's definitely going to be something that I hope UCF looks at going forward. Like Eric said, it's a transitional year. It's still Gus Malzahn's first season. You can't just go and win a national title with a first season in your first season as coach. You got, especially when he's bringing all sorts of changes. So I would say don't panic there either. So I think, and at this point, obviously it's heart-wrenching because we definitely had chances to win, just like a lot of the other losses UCF has had over the years. But you win some, you lose some, and in the end, you just kind of have to take that frustration or heartbreak and just take it on. You got to just focus on the positive. Dylan Gabriel had us, even though the passing yards weren't there, he had a very dynamic game. He caught a touchdown. He ran a touchdown, passed for a touchdown. I have not seen Dylan Gabriel so dynamic before. It's amazing. A deep receiving core. The receiving core was great. Ryan O'Keefe, Jalen Robinson, great. We got to see Johnny Richardson play more. I really hope we get to see him. He's such an explosive player. And I think there's still some stuff to be happy about with this team. Tremont Morris-Brash is back. So and he opens it up with an interception. You have him get some more reps, and I think that he could certainly be a valuable addition to this defense that I think really needs him. So I would just say, overall, don't panic. I'm not going to say UCF isn't going to lose again this season. We probably will, but I think that we're not going to. I don't think now's the time to start pointing fingers and getting angry with each other like our fan base, like the fan base can kind of do sometimes. And I get it; it's heart-wrenching. It happens, but you know what? It's 12:45 a.m. I say sleep on it, think about it a little bit, and then talk to us. And not even tomorrow morning, like tomorrow night or something. Because this is a game you could overreact to, and I think that you really just need to take a moment, think about it logically, and then move on. Hopefully we'll improve.
Sleep the weekend too. You might as well sleep the weekend, to be honest, because especially the way the game ended, it might take a while to take a couple extra days if you need to. Drew,
maybe root for McKenzie too against Wake Forest.
All I can think of is Chumbawamba, pissing the night away. Yeah, that's what you probably need to do.
Knocked down.
Yeah, exactly. I think we need to piss a few nights away and just kind of let things lie. Here's the truth. This is a marathon, not a sprint. And while I said that it's no excuse if the coaches don't know the players, the truth is also these are not the coaches' players, and they may not necessarily fit the schemes. So it's going to take some time for things to kind of work out. And flaws that we saw last year are a lot of flaws this year. And you're going to have to accept the fact that there's going to be close games. There's going to be unlucky bounces, and you're gonna lose some games. I mean, it's difficult. It's not fun. I mean, I saw a tweet on there where basically a guy says, if you say that this loss isn't as big, the biggest deal, and the rest of the season matters, you should delete your account. And yeah, I retweeted that and said that was probably the biggest knee-jerk reaction I saw all night. The truth is, one, it's one game. Two, the sun will rise tomorrow. And three, UCF is.
Are you sure it's going to rise? Are you sure?
Well, I mean, I may have like a $10 in my pocket. I'd be willing to put up for that, but I mean, not more than that. I've got to be able to buy lunch. But the other thing is the fact that UCF still controls their destiny. They still have a conference schedule. This is not the end of the season. If you're going to lose a game, it's actually better to lose one in your out-of-conference schedule than to lose in conference because of all the dynamics. So I think if you're going to lose a game, this was the one to do it. You don't want to lose against Boise State. You both are competing against each other. Louisville, you're not really competing with each other for the same thing. So this is probably the best time to lose a game if you have to lose a game. And while the way it worked out hurts, it stings. Sometimes, victory tastes sweet and revenge is bitter, but and losses hurt. But you know what? We're going to have another shot at seeing the team play for, a conference championship starting in 2 weeks. And I think that should make people feel a little bit better.
It's all about controlling what only you can control.
We're ending on cliches. How about Eric Edwards? He was at the game too. Shout out to you, Eric. That's a lot of people went up to that game. Good for we heard you.
The fans were loud. It was impressive. I mean, that opening kickoff, it was so loud hearing that UCF Knights when they scored and they took that 7-0 lead. You heard that UCF chant. I mean, that was exciting. I'm sitting on my chair, typing up my notes from the game as it goes on. But I'm typing notes of how excited I am to hear these fans that travel and make a lot of noise. That's another thing that the Big 12 likes, about UCF is the fan base. They travel, and I think the team needs that.
It's a little harder to get to Lubbock than it is to Louisville. Let's be real. We're going to miss some good towns.
Louisville's not a conference game, so
it's a beautiful city. I mean, it's a great city.
Don't forget, this is the first time we played them since the 2013 game, and that was a classic. So
yeah, and I think they always
a game. Classic too. It just didn't go the right way.
Right. And speaking of classic, though, this is just kind of something I was curious about, especially as one of the younger fans out there. Malik Cunningham or Teddy Bridgewater, at least in their games against UCF.
Well, they're different. Teddy Bridgewater is a pocket passer. Malik Cunningham is a much more dynamic player. But as far as a pure quarterback, I mean, Teddy Bridgewater is a better pure quarterback, but he also had more talent around him. That was a better 2013. The 2013 season had a better Louisville team, had a better UCF team, and it wasn't close compared to what we're seeing this year.
Which is why I don't think this game will reach the 2.2 million viewers that game did. That game was deep in October. It was a big game in the America. I don't know if that number gets there, but with the crazy finish, I'm going to say maybe it's 1.5, 1.8.
And being on a Friday night.
But no, I mean, that game in 13 was a Friday night game, so it's a very good comparison. Carter Blackburn, Danny Cannell did that game back in the day. Ian Frazier, I just hate losses because I just get tired of the trolling from Florida State, Miami fans. Dude, you're not gonna be hearing any trolling from FSU or Miami fans anytime. Florida State lost to Jacksonville State.
Maybe Miami because they're more delusional than anyone else.
Until they lose to
Florida
Michigan
State
State.
Fans, they're quiet right now. They got nothing to talk about.
They're worried about going winless. I mean, if they don't beat Wake Forest.
What a shame.
How wild would that be for McKenzie? Goes and he has an undefeated season in 17 at UCF, and potentially, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but in theory, Florida State, if they don't, depending on how they show up against Wake Forest, could go winless. If they go winless this year, how many quarterbacks could say they've been part of both? That'd be weird.
Definitely be weird, but I've always said, I'd love to see Mackenzie Milton throw for 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, and Florida State to lose every single game. The individual accolades and team accolades are different, but yeah, if Florida State loses all 12, oh darn, that's terrible.
I don't know if he can. We'll see if he can get to 300 on that, but we'll figure it out. That's their problem.
I'll say this to Ian's comment, because I actually that resonated with me a little bit, because the way that he's saying I just hate losses because I get tired of the trolling from FSU Miami fans. You know something, Ian? I was sick of it too back in 2017. Look, or just when they were just not care, or back and then when we were just, the national championship doesn't matter and all that type of stuff. Like back before, I would say before Dylan Gabriel really took over, I think I was mad about it a lot too. I was tired of the trolling. I got really tired of it. And I think part of it might be because Danny White was punching, kind of punching back at them a little bit. And I was all up in that. Like I wanted to do that too. But I think honestly, if the past few years, especially under Dylan Gabriel, and now that we have Terry Mohajir at AD, who brings a kind of a whole different attitude in there, I think, and also just from taking it for so long, at this point you kind of get tired of it, and it's just like, yeah, okay, sure, you go ahead and troll us, fine. We're going to just be the better program.
By the way, I would say this. Drew knows this. 2015, we went winless. It doesn't get any worse than that. That was worse. I mean, anything that happened, 17, any of these losses is nothing compared to 2015, going winless and dealing with that on a weekly basis.
And not only go winless, but lose badly.
Oh my goodness, that was
when the wheels fell off. That car burst into flames and fell off a cliff.
No, you're right. All right. Well, let's wrap it up. Note, because it's a good way to my last point, which is not the end of the world. We've had worse. 2015 was a bad year. So look, give credit to Louisville. They win the game. Hey, we didn't lose to Jacksonville State.
Hey, that's what I say about St. Cloud. It's not the end of the world, but you can see it from there.
Plus, breaking news. Drew Glukoff is reporting that the sun will rise. Breaking on Drew.
Yeah.
Hashtag breaking.
All right. That's going to do it. Thanks to everybody who's chimed in with the questions here. Tonight we'll be on after every post game with the cast of thousands, different faces and voices to take you through wins and even through the losses to help you out. Check us out. Follow us at UCF_Banneret. Check out blackandgoldbanneret.com. Drew's going to be working on his knee-jerk reactions. That will be up on the site. This episode, obviously, will be up on their site as well as on our YouTube page. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube page. Give us a thumbs up and a like for all of our content so we keep putting up more video content there as well. So, for Bryson Turner, and for Drew Glukoff, I'm Eric Lopez saying good night here with, once again, unfortunately, the final score, Louisville 42 and UCF 35. Good night and charge on.
Night, Nation.